Good evening and welcome to another program of Let's Talk Politics. I'm your host, Michael Gordon. I'm joined by two very distinguished gentlemen, ministers of government, Minister of Health, Dr. Frank Anthony, and of course, Minister of Labor, Mr. Joseph Hamilton. We will be discussing a number of issues ranging from matters in the health sector to matters relating to investment and respect for our national sovereignty, as well as budgetary allocations to state agencies of the state, including the Parliament Office. I'd like to welcome our viewers across the length and breadth of Guyana and also in the diaspora. Let's get right into the meat of tonight's discussion. The Charles Rose School of Nursing has become somewhat the issues and government's decisions surrounding this institution has now been thrown into the political realm when a simple policy-related matter or the execution of a policy has been actioned. Gentlemen, I believe, and I'm going to start with you, Dr. Anthony, I believe this issue surrounding the nursing school, which is located at Linden, is about to be and has begun to be heavily politicized. I'm saying so in the context of the fact that the strategic positioning for that particular institution is as a consequence that it services nursing students from hinterland communities, and its geographic location is strategic from a logistical standpoint. However, this issue is now being made one of politics because it is located in the mining town of Linden, predominantly a PNC stronghold. To my mind, I'm going to delve into a matter that many are not comfortable dealing with, and it's a matter of race. If an institution at Linden has been affected in one way, shape, or form, there is a natural connotation that that institution was set up there to service black people, for want of a better phrase. Dr. Anthony, I will ask you to walk us through the decisions made relating to the Charles Rosen Nursing School, and it would essentially cause us to understand the gist behind those decisions. And I'm going to ask you to, Minister Hamilton, to weigh in on this matter. Dr. Anthony.
Well, thank you very much, Michael. And thank you to my colleague, uh, Minister Joseph Hamilton, for joining us on this program. And, a special good night to all your viewers. This matter is actually a very simple matter. Um, as you know, we have a nursing school in Linden, and it's called the Charles Rosa Nursing School. And they offer several professional nursing programs where persons can go there and get training. Now, this nursing school is not just for people in Linden. It is for all the regions of Guyana, but more particularly, uh, we want to train people from regions 1, 7, 8, and 9, as well as persons in region 10. Unfortunately, what has happened is that we had an intake of two batches of students, batch 66 and class 17. Batch 66 deals with the professional nursing program, and class 17 has to do with professional nursing assistants. Now, for both of these, we have had an intake in terms of the batch 66 of 34 persons. And of those 34, 24 are from Region 10. And then for the class 17, which is the registered nursing assistants, you had 33 students, 21 uh, of whom are from Region 10. And because of this, it means that a lot of the students from the other regions are not getting an opportunity to study at that school. Now, I want to give you another, maybe a little bit of a background. If we go back to 2018, because some of these programs are 3-year program, 4-year program, and so forth. If you go back to 2018, for batch number 64, they took in a number of students. They took in 36 students. And of those 36 students, you have 29 of them are from Linden. And you also have a batch 65, where they took in 27 nursing students. And of those 27, 22 are from Linden. Now, if you add up the two batches when they graduate, some of them would be graduating at the end of this year, others are due for graduation in 2022. That would mean that we are adding 51 more nurses to the staff of Region 10. We did a review of all the regions and to look especially at our nursing staff. Every other region in this, there's a deficit for trained nurses, and we need to get trained nurses to go to those regions. Region 10, however, we have currently an excess of nurses. We have 233 registered nurses, more than we need in Region 10 right now. And we have an additional 106 registered nursing assistants that we need in Region 10 right now. And for the people who started in 2018, we are going to add to this excess another 51 nurses and nursing assistants. So clearly, the health system in Region 10 do not need additional nurses, but we do need nurses in Region 1, in Region 2, in Region 3, in Region 4, in Region 5, in Region 7, 6, 7, 8, and 9. But while these regions have sent us students, they are unable to get into the program because somebody has stopped them, and they prefer to have more people from Region 10 enter these programs. So the ministry made a very simple decision, and that is, while we have not stopped the existing program, those from 2018, we stopped the program that is going to be starting or should have started about 2 weeks ago, and that is for batch 66 and for this class 17. And we put a temporary stop to it because we want to review the intake and make it more equitable so that the regions where the ministry would have greater need for nurses, that we are able to get students from those regions. And you know, while we have excess nurses in Region 10, if you ask those nurses to go and work in another region, they don't want to go in those regions. And so this is our problem. We have trained a lot of people there, but they don't want to go to other regions to work. And so this has been a challenge for us. So what we want to do now in that nursing school is to make sure that we train people who would come from the various regions, and then we can, when they finish their training, they go back to those regions so that they can serve. Now, instead of the APNU AFC welcoming this move, where we are going to make sure that we have equitable distribution of nurses across the health system, they have now criticized this, and they're saying that we have stopped the program. Literally, we don't want Region 10 people to be trained, and they're making a lot of politics out of this. But this, as I said, is a really simple matter. And if they were, you know, really and truly wanted to see equity in the health system, when they were in government, they would have adjusted this to make sure that nurses coming from those hinterland regions would have been trained. Obviously, they have failed in this regard, and that's why we have the deficits in those regions. And now we are taking steps to correct it. And we will correct it so that, in the other regions, people can have trained nurses and we can improve the health system there.
Minister Hamilton, I want to bring you in on this issue because you more than anyone else understand understand the thinking, especially from a political standpoint, as it relates to the rhetoric and the propaganda peddled in areas such as Region 10, Linden more specifically.
If I may, and good night, Frank and Michael, and viewers and listeners. Look, if I may pick up from where Frank left off, the fact that the Charles Rosa Nursing School, it has a very large dormitory, must inform all and sundry that it was specifically created to allow for large intakes of persons who are not resident of Linden and Region 10. That is the reason why they have a hostel. If this nursing school was just to train people in Linden and Region 10, there would have been no need for an hostel. But in fact, as I repeat, there is a hostel that dozens of persons can be housed. And it is because, as I repeat for emphasis, it was always to bring people from Region 8 and 9 to be trained there in Linden because of the closeness of, say, places around Madhya, thereabout, and Lethem and Region 9 as a whole. Now, the second point is, and Frank also can substantiate this, the same thing with nurses. When I was at the Ministry of Health as Parliamentary Secretary, it was the same thing with doctors. The region that had the largest amount of doctors per capita was Region 10, and I think it still remains the same. And the third point is, I have had several instances where trained nurses from Region 10 during that period, they were sent to Region 1. And you had the devil's job managing them to ensure they stay there. And they were not sent there to be there forever. They were sent to be there for stints of, I think, 1 year or 2 years. And every day you had a complaint to deal with. If you visited the regions during Region 1, all the complaints you will get. Region 9, some of them also were sent to Region 9 to work. And so Dr. Anthony is right. They have a great difficulty, and they wrestle all the time with going to work any place out of Region 10. And some of them, not even other parts of Region 10, they want to work. They think that the system just trained them to be in Region 10 and Region 10 only. Now, it is the citizens of Guyana, through their tax-paying dollars, who make the money available for the state to run these training programs free of cost. And I would dare say that the state and the government that manages the state, we have an obligation to ensure that this matter regarding training and utilizing of state resources, it is equitably done. So I would have no apologies to make for the comments I am making, and to make this point that, of course, Michael, you raised this point. What else can Harmon and the APNO FC do other than always latching on to matters from a racial standpoint? Because there's no other conversation they can have. They are bankrupt, and I use a word regularly to explain many of them. They're dullards. That is what they are. And that is what dullards do. They're incapable of putting before people policies and programs and a vision for their livelihood and their life and their development. So everything, it is not new that the PNC latches on to everything and make it a racial, ethnic matter, when it is not. As indicated by Dr. Anthony, it is a clear cut matter that any sane person will understand. We cannot continue to train maximally nurses for only one region. And secondly, when they're trained, they don't want to work at all out of their region. And as much as the policy is that you train nurses to go back into their region and work, I think the fact that the Ministry of Health is faced with this matter going forward, and even beyond the suspension and restart and equity, the issue about making necessary arrangements for nurses in Linden and Region 10 to go work in other regions. They are people who have an obligation to the state and to the people of Guyana. They were trained free of cost, and they have a binding contract with the government to work within the public sector. And therefore, the Ministry of Health, I believe the authority is with the Ministry of Health to make arrangements for postings of all the people who should not be there. That is overloaded the system, and that you have to pay and will have no work to do properly, because you have more than you should have in the region. So I am in full agreement with the decisions. I would say this, that this matter came to my attention, I think 2-3 weeks ago. And I didn't know it existed. I didn't understand what it was. And I called the permanent secretary to advise me, so that I can advise and inform persons who are in Linden, who didn't understand at the time why the suspension, because at the level of the nursing school and its management, they did not properly inform the students. Now the nation is properly informed, and the Ministry of Health and the government must defend the position that they took and the positions they will take to ensure that balance and equity come to the nursing system and the nursing programs in Region 10.
And I'm gonna ask you, Joe, forgive me, Minister Hamilton, to address this. The nurses of Region 10 seem to, in some way, engage in a particular type of militancy. A particular type of militancy that is aligned to a particular political posture. And I'm saying so unapologetically. You have to call a spade a spade. One would recall nurses suddenly realizing that they ought to make certain demands only after August 2020. You address some of these, Dr. Anthony. And it is in that context, I believe, and as I said, calling a spade, nurses in Region 10 takes a particular posture, which is aligned to some political positions, and one must have to say it as they see it. Joe.
No, but the thing is, Michael, and I know Frank is very capable, and the ministry under is what the technical officers they're capable to deal with this matter. I have some understanding of these matters because I function there as parliamentary secretary, paying specific attention to regional health services. But the point is, as I have said, and you're right, Michael, look, we have the matter that is still languishing there with this so-called comment made by the chief executive officer of the hospital, and that was is now extended to benefits and all kinds of nonsense. And the matter is clear and simple. We, at the level of the Ministry of Labor, invited both parties to seek to mediate in the matter, and we pointed them to a certain course of action to bring to an end the strike, the sit-in, whatever they have. And it was the nurses, shepherded by their unions, who have refused to engage subsequently with the Ministry of Health. And therefore, the languishing so called protest or whatever militant action, as you call it, Michael, that still exists, it is because they want it to be that. I don't think the issue is about some comment made by the CEO. It is political operations. And I'm told an officer that is an officer of mine, I will deal with that very shortly, who are very much involved in this action and this activity. But I believe that public servants who you have a responsibility to serve all the people of Guyana, you must be a public servant. You want to be a politician, leave that alone and join politics like myself and Frank, we have decided to do. And so you have to separate it out. And the militancy, yes, Michael, we will deal with that as a government. You know, my point is this. The train has left the station as regard development of this country. And nobody can hold it back. And so APNU FC here and there and PNC could roll out these so-called militant action here and there and latch on to matters and make it political and make it racial. The train has left the station. The people of this country are wiser now. And what the people of this country want is economic development and benefits for themselves and their children. And they see the People's Progressive Party, Civic, as fulfilling that mandate that they gave to us. So a lot of these matters, I don't worry too much. I pay attention to us as a government delivering services and goods to the people and the commitment we made to the people to ensure that their lives become better.
Point made by Minister Hamilton. Not much attention to, or much attention to delivering services to the people of Guyana. But critical to the services of the people of Guyana is the delivery of professional and caring health services. And critical to that is the people of Region 10. And again, I have no bones in referring to the posture of the nurses as militant. Dr. Anthony?
Yeah, well, again, I think, we need to look in this particular issue. I think it's quite a straightforward one. We want to make sure that we have equity at this school. We have a number of persons who, you know, would like to get into the school because they want to serve their regions. And we are going to adjust the intake. We are going to make the corrective actions so that those persons would get an opportunity to be trained and to go back to their regions, regions 1, 7, 8, and 9, and so that they can serve those regions. Right now, as I said before, we have a deficit of staff, trained staff in those regions. And here's an opportunity to train people at this school so that they can go back and serve. So this is one way of addressing that deficiency that we have in the regions. One of the things I want to say, and perhaps this is something that all of us should look at. In region 10, you know, the government right now, we are rolling out this vaccination against COVID-19. And we want all Guyana to get immunized because unless all of us adults in Guyana are immunized, it's going to be difficult for us to reach herd immunity. So the government has taken a decision where we are now making sure that vaccines are in every single region, and we are encouraging people to take those vaccines. But in Region 10, again, one of the things that we have heard is that there are lots of political murmurings telling people, instructing people, passing out false information to people, dissuading them not to take the vaccines. And by doing so, you're not helping the people of Linden. What you're doing them harm. Because without those vaccines, they're not going to be protected. Linden, as we speak, have about 9.3% of their adult population receiving the first dose of the vaccine. This is totally unacceptable when the rest of the country is around 33%. And again, it comes back to the posturing and the kind of, things that are being uttered in the whisper campaign and other things, the rumors and all kinds of other things. So we have to get people to understand that if we are going to build a fair and an equitable society, all of us would have to embrace these ideas. And we have to tell people, those that are coming to sow, these seeds of distrust, and they think that that is doing politics, we have to tell them this is not how you do politics. We can find other ways of addressing these matters. But people's health, when it comes to things like offering equitable training to people, these are principles that we should stand on. And this is the kind of thing that we are trying to encourage. And therefore, I really do hope that we can encourage people, get some understanding, so that these programs can grow and that all of us can benefit from these programs. And with the vaccination, I'm still hopeful that we'll get community leaders in Linden who would step forward and help us to make sure that we can immunize the community up there. Because without this, then we will still have challenges in terms of reaching herd immunity. So I just wanted to add that as well.
There is another matter I want us to have some discussions on, and this deals specifically with allegations and utterances emanating out of the opposition quarters about presumably government slashing of the budget of the opposition leader. And Speaker of the National Assembly, Mansour Nadir, in my view, addresses issues substantively, and he raised a number of issues. What has actually happened is a submission made by the leader of the opposition office to the parliament office. And like every single agency of government, no one gets all of what you ask for. There is eventually an appropriation in keeping with the resources available of the state in the context of what is seen as priority in the interests of the people of this country. Now, the leader of the opposition requested a budget for his office, which amounted to in excess of over 200% of what is traditionally allocated and appropriated to the leader of the opposition. The leader of the opposition requested, I believe it was salaries and remuneration for staff, much more staff than any other leader of the opposition prior, to the magnitude of $10 million. Janitorial supplies, $8 million. Capital budget expenditure, if my figures are correct, in excess of $40 million, which included the purchase of a Prado and pickup vehicles and so on, which to my mind, gentlemen, is a microcosm of the excesses and extravagance of the immediate past PNC government. However, the opposition office does not control the coffers of Guyana. So the leader of the opposition is now crying foul because he is now unable to splurge and unable to engage in excesses similar to those he engaged in as a senior minister of government in the PNC government. Can you imagine any office of this state, government agency, requested and being allocated a budget in excess of 200% of what was prior? Minister Hamilton, I'm going to ask you to weigh in on this issue because in my mind, there's one word to describe it: ridiculous.
Micheal, is not ridiculous. That is what hustlers do. Hustlers hustle. That is what hustlers do. You know, I'm never surprised, I'm never shocked about these guys because I have already made up my mind as to what they are and who they are. So it's a hustler. I don't know the title, whether the man is head of of what you used to call it then, the presidential secretariat or whatever it used to be, whether he's the chief of staff or whether he's the minister of state. It's a hustler. That's what hustlers do. Now, a new title, opposition leader, the old title is still there, Micheal. Hustler. So, when they were in government, he had the authority to hustle all the time, and he did that. I would dare say he did it very successfully. Not just him, he and all of his lackeys and cronies of all different stripe and strand. And importantly to note, for all of these people who like to jump on the PVP about paying attention to the needs and wants of people of African descent, they should pay attention to the fact that all the people who were in the gentleman's hustler camp, they were not, or most of the people, they were not people of African origin. So that's something to say in passing. But the thing is, there's no shock or surprise. And Micheal, you were saying 200%, over 200%. It's 260%. So when you say over 200, people would think it's 201 we're talking about, or 202.
I beg your
The fact is,
forgiveness.
it's over 260% of what it was. And importantly, Dr. Anthony, you will know, these are guys who like to chop budgets. And we have had, when they were in government, a lot of fights over the same thing he is crying tears about. When the constitutional agencies went before Jordan for budgets that they needed for different things, Jordan unilaterally, without reference to no one, he chopped them up left, right, and center. And he always, every year, he would make the point that he had to do that because there is no fiscal space. So, Mr. Harmon, there is no fiscal space at the Parliament office to allow for you to be given what you asked for. There's no fiscal space ever, today, tomorrow, and next year, to give Joe Harmon $8 million for janitorial services. What are they cleaning? To clean one office in 12 months? That means that you're talking about average of $800,000 being spent to clean one building. And everyone knows the building, it is on Kroll Street there. $800,000 to clean the building with janitorial services. Oh my God. That is Savon's waste management running out of there. It can be the opposition leader's office. And then $10 million to pay staff. To pay Ekbal and those people who are hanging around there. That will not happen. So understand, it will not happen. And then the gentleman is not satisfied with a vehicle that is given to him. He wants brand new, 2 new vehicles. Again, that will not happen. So you were enjoying, slashing other people's budget and proposals. Many of those were legitimate, not like yours. Your proposal is a hustler proposal. And therefore the speaker is right not to entertain it. And I would say to the speaker, never entertain such. Entertain an opposition leader and his facilities who are genuine, wanting to work with the government for the development of the people of Guyana. Don't entertain a hustler and let him believe that he can continue to hustle, because once he succeeds in the year 2001, he will come back, Micheal. The percentage will be over 300% next year, 2020. So that is the real position. I don't expect better from the guy, even though he has this title that is a constitutional title.
Dr. Anthony, before you go, I want to make the point, and we keep referring to this allocation as slash and cut. You can only slash if someone has $10 and you cut it to 5, then you could refer to it as slash or cut. This is a request for an amount, and you were given a particular amount consistent with everything else coming out of the consolidated fund. It cannot be described as a slash. It was an allocation in the realm of reasonableness, which makes your proposal unreasonable, Dr. Anthony.
Well, I think you put it over quite eloquently, and that is that there was a request that was made for X amount, and while if we had all the resources in the world, that amount probably would have been given. But given that we have many priorities, this is what you can get at this point in time. And what was allocated was quite reasonable. What was being asked for, when you go through the numbers as Minister Hamilton just did, you have a 260% increase from what was there the previous year. You have quite an unreasonable request to get $8 million for cleaning services. You have another $10 million for staffing. And these are excesses that is really not necessary. So, you've requested an amount and you have been given more than you got the previous year, but you're not satisfied with that. So now you're putting it over as if, somehow your budget was cut and this is such an injustice. It's not an injustice. In fact, you got more than than last year's budget. And I think the leader of the opposition, he can run his office with the amounts that have been allocated. Why is it that the leader of the opposition would require several vehicles to run that office? Uh, you know, so look, we have a country to build. We have many priorities right now. And again, I hate to do this, but we are in COVID times, and the government has a lot of expenditure relating to COVID, whether it's buying PPEs to keep nurses safe or health workers safe, getting vaccines, looking after people who are coming into the hospitals, buying oxygen, all these things. These are expenses we would not have had if we didn't have COVID. And, perhaps we could have allocated it differently. But unfortunately, we have to do these allocations, and we are trying our best. And to try to now jack up a budget for the leader of the opposition, they're making these unreasonable requests. Um, you know, we have to prioritize the priority right now. And our priority is to make sure that we keep people safe across this country. And that's what we're working and that's what we're doing.
A good and patriotic leader of the opposition would appreciate that much of what was requested will not be allocated or appropriated because we're just about commencing phase two of the COVID cash grant distribution. So I have no doubt that a very patriotic leader of the opposition, as patriotic as I know he is, Mr. Harman, would be more than happy to know that priority has been given to relief being brought to the people of this country, many of whom are his constituents. So I should thank him publicly for truly understanding in the context of the what's available, and that the people continue to be priority in the eyes of the People's Progressive Party Civic. Of course, to our viewers, a reminder you're watching Let's Talk Politics, a very special program brought to you by the People's Progressive Party. I thank you for watching across the length and breadth of Guyana. And before we go into the next issue, gentlemen, I'm more than certain why $8 million would be required for janitorial services at the leader of the opposition, given the rhetoric that have been coming out of that office over the past 6 months
They
or
got a lot of
thereabout or more. Uh, this is me calling a spade again. A very ugly. I I amuse you there, Minister Hamilton. A very ugly incident occurred very recently, and this involved some investors. As President, His Excellency Mohamed Irfanali had said, Guyana is open for business. And Guyana is open for business in all spheres. And even in the traditional sectors and also in our oil and gas sector, we're looking at a construction boom in this country. And you said eloquently, Minister Hamilton, that if I could paraphrase you correctly, the train of development has left the station and there's no turning back. But there must be rules and confines within which investors operate. And you saw recently the utter disrespect meted out to Minister of Housing Colin Crowell and the CEO of the Central Housing and Planning Authority, Mrs. Sherwin Greaves, as they sought to bring some semblance of order to areas and lands under the control of the Central Housing and Planning Authority. And gentlemen, Dr. Anthony, I'll begin with you in relation to some of the expectations on the part of investors, which essentially begins with ensuring that you're appropriately licensed and permitted to be in this country and to work in this country. And to understand that in the context of our sovereignty, we have rules.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Michael. I think we all have seen the videos of that particular incident, and that is something that we cannot tolerate in this country. We welcome investment, yes, but investments have to be made in a particular context, and it must be rule-based. We don't want rogue investors to come in and do as they please. That's not the kind of investment that we want in this country. And what we witness there is a lot of lawlessness where people feel that they can just come, set up shop, break all the rules, don't have to abide by our laws, and we must accept that. Well, that's quite unacceptable for us. And we have rejected that, and all right thinking persons in this country have rejected that kind of behavior. And so I think the actions of the government, one of the individuals who were involved there came into the country, did not have permission to work. I think that individual has since been sent off. And other actions, if you're going to set up a factory or whatever you're going to do, you have to get the requisite permission. And I think this is a good example that we're setting so that others who might have had these ideas that they can come in here and do as they please and that would be acceptable behavior. I think with this example that we are setting, it would also set the tone for those lawbreakers to get them in order. So I think the government has reacted quite appropriately and have, you know, we are setting the tone with this particular investor, but I hope that others who think that they could have break the law and get away with it, that this would tell them that we are not in a mood to tolerate such things.
Your take on this issue.
Look, the thing is, Michael, I had to restrain myself. I was so angry that every time I go to type, I have to remember that I'm representing a government and I'm a minister. Believe me, And so I was relieved, and my frustration was relieved when I read the news report that one gentleman got 7 days and one got 24 hours. Because I was at that place where I would have said some things, terrible things, because of how angry I was. And just to make this point, I've had to deal with not that type of escalated incident, but I have had to reverse action by expatriate companies who sought to think that they can make their own rules here. I just 2 weeks ago, I had to intervene company who, instead of paying overtime to the Guyanese people of time and a half, they imported some methodology whereby you set up what they call a time bank and you give the person a day off based on their 8 hours. But the thing is, so the person is wrong because the 8 hours is not 8 hours. 8 hours is 12 hours because it's time and a half they're supposed to be paid. But it should not have been done at all because overtime payment speaks about paying money to the employee. And just today, I have had I had a conversation just this afternoon with another expatriate company in the gold mining industry, and I've been doing that through the length and breadth of this country. So, Dr. Anthony is so right that there is this thought process in some of these people's heads that they can come into this country and do anything they please. But he's so right. That will not be tolerated. And all of us in our area of activity and authority, we will not allow anyone to believe that they can do anything in this country and get away with it. And the fact that at a level of labor and occupation safety and health, every day I read the Riot Act and I speak to Guyanese investors and businesses in a way whereby they must uphold the law. I will not, in my sphere of influence as minister, will tolerate any expatriate company coming into this country and think they could abuse our people and take advantage of our people. The incident there, I mean, where a guy who, nobody could think that he could speak to a minister of the government anyhow and senior government officials in the public sphere. So the appropriate measure the government responded with, and it's a learning moment, I hope, a teaching moment for investors who are here and who have an interest to come here, that we will accept you, we will allow you to make money on your returns on your investment, but we will not allow you to break the law. We will not allow you to think you can take advantage on our brothers and sisters. And that is the government position, how we will deal with this matter. And I will hope that the nations from which these people are coming from to work and to set up in Guyana, they will try to advise them properly how the rules are in this country, whether it be labor, environmental, at the level of CHP, and even at the level of the Ministry of Health. What needs to be done before you can move forward in this country?
Gentlemen, our time has gone. Closing thoughts. I'm going to begin with you, Dr. Anthony. Essentially, your closing thoughts on the situation at the nursing school at Linden, and your encouragement to the nurses of Region 10 in relation to understanding the whole notion of service to the people. 60 seconds. I'm sorry to do this.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Michael. Thank you once again for having me on this program. I think we have laid the facts out. So if there were anyone who pretended not to understand the situation, I think you have given me an opportunity to explain them. And it's quite clear that we have a situation where there were one set of people were benefiting from the school rather than having a more equitable distribution of the spaces. So we are going to correct that. And we are going to make sure that all the regions can have equitable access to the nursing schools program, and so that nurses from those regions would be able to come to the Charles Rosa School, get their training, and go back and serve their community. And that's what we are seeking to do here. So The two programs that we mentioned, Batch 66 and Class 17, they've been temporarily suspended. And once we sort out the issues with intake, we will restart those programs. All the other existing programs are still continuing, and those nurses who are on those programs would graduate soon. Some of them would graduate at the end of the year, others would graduate in 2022. And I do hope that this would bring some clarity to the issue, and that we'll have all persons who have an interest in this matter would work to make sure that the right and accurate information is disseminated. And I want to call on the APNU AFC to desist from using these matters to make it into a political football. You're not helping people by doing that. All you're doing is to create mischief and sow distrust in the community.
Minister Hamilton.
Well, Michael, quickly, look, government governs. That is what they're elected to do. And government, in governing, have to make tough decisions. And every day, Minister Anthony will tell you, we have to make decisions. Sometimes they're painful decisions, but the fact is they have to be made. And as a government, whilst you pay attention to criticism, whilst you pay attention to advice, whilst you pay attention to constructive criticism and cooperation, you cannot be dissuaded by mischief makers. You cannot be dissuaded and shouldn't be dissuaded by hustlers. You cannot be dissuaded by liars. The APNU AFC and its leadership, including the present opposition leader, is a notorious liar. They have lied and lied and lied. They have lied to themselves, to the supporters, to the people of Guyana, the international community for 5 straight months. We had to experience that and go through all travail. So that is what liars do. They continue to lie. So I don't expect anything better coming out from the opposition leader and the opposition leadership than what is being spewed daily. But I count on the Guyanese people, who I think are wiser now, and they could see through the lies and understand the truth, and they will act accordingly and appropriately. So, Michael, thank you very much for having me on the program tonight. Thank you very much for your viewers for looking at us explain some of these matters.
Just a word of caution, Minister Hamilton. You have to be careful about those allegations of lies when there are billion-dollar lawsuits flying left, right, and center. We just have to be careful about those.
I already have 2 of those, so I'm getting accustomed to it now.
One would recall the use of the arms of the state when a particular gentleman was called a charlatan. Now there is the use of the court in lawsuits, so we have to be careful about those things. Gentlemen, I thank you both.
Mike,
I thank you both.
There's a famous reggae singer called Bob Marley.
Very
and he
famous.
said, "Cap fit, let them wear it."
I thank you both for being on this program. I thank our listeners and our viewers keeping us company. And I'm looking forward to seeing you again on Friday. Join my colleague, Edward Lane, tomorrow, same time, same place. This has been Let's Talk Politics, a very special program brought to you by the People's Progressive Party, CIFIC. Good night.